Part 33. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 321. The tough wife of the chief minister did not make any unreasonable demands because of her husband's favor. His concubines in the backyard should be left alone, and there was no argument that the backyard would be cleared for one person. After all, even if the concubine's room was dealt with, it would be impossible to deal with it. The sons and daughters who have already given birth are stuffed back into the house. So the wives and concubines live together peacefully. As for whether it is truly peaceful, probably only the chief minister and his wife know. But there is one fact that everyone knows. The Xie family has many heirs, but except for the precious Xie, none of them are valuable. They all say that concubines are equivalent to half of the family's slaves. This saying is implemented extremely thoroughly in the Xie family. Mr. Xieju is the young master. The other 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 young masters of the Xie family who were born before him are just weeds with a sense of existence but no status. They don't even dare to fart in front of him. And the 9th master of the Xie family, like his father, is romantic and affectionate by nature, and has a handsome appearance and a pair of charming phoenix eyes. He has fascinated thousands of girls in the brothels of the imperial capital, and has firmly overshadowed the 4 major families, including the royal family. All the noble sons among them are popular in the entire imperial capital and are firmly seated on the throne of the uncrowned number 1 son. The sun is setting in the west and the cloud light is fading. The quiet and elegant backyard of the Xie family's residence is filled with lake light and smoke. The young master, dressed in white and black robes, is lying weakly and bonelessly on a bench by the lake. His appearance is handsome and charming, his eyebrows are lazy and comfortable, and his narrow red phoenix eyes are exuding a breath of fresh air. The soul-stirring shimmering luster can be called a monster. The clear sound of the piano came to my ears, melodious and graceful, like light smoke and gurgling water. The 9th master of the Xie family is either in a brothel or a casino every day. It's rare to see such a peaceful appearance today. Is he about to change his gender? A handsome young man in a blue robe came over, waving a folding fan. He was handsome and calm, and looked particularly elegant under the setting sun of the cold winter month. The man playing the piano not far away closed his eyes and strummed the strings with concentration. His voice was calm and he said in a calm voice, "How quiet are the years? Are you not afraid of insulting Master Ju by saying this to him?" The blue-robed young master walked over and sat on the ground. There was brewed tea on the grass by the river, freshly baked snacks that had not yet cooled down, and several jars of fine wine, all of which you could take for yourself. Insult, the blue-robed young master chuckled, and then nodded casually, "That's true. Being able to cut off a person's flesh piece by piece, and then roast it and watch the other person eat it, apart from Xieju, I'm afraid there is no one else. The 2 of them are so ruthless, and the peaceful years really have nothing to do with him." As soon as he said this, the man playing the piano across from him paused with his fingers, and the sound of the piano was immediately disrupted. He simply stopped and slowly raised his eyes to look at the man curled up lazily in the recliner. "When did this happen? Why didn't I know? You've been away from the imperial capital all year round, so it's normal for the news to be blocked," the blue-robed young master said calmly. "Tell me, why do you want to see me?" Mr. Xieju, who was lying on the recliner, opened his eyes slightly, with a tired look on his face. "Tomorrow we will go to the palace to attend Princess Feng's husband's selection banquet. All 3 of us will go." The blue-robed young man was stunned. Husband's selection banquet? Did I hear that correctly? If there's nothing wrong with your ears, you should have heard it correctly, Mr. Xieju said in a casual voice. "If you don't go, you know the consequences." The blue-robed young man frowned. "What the hell is this?" The young master playing the piano thought for a moment, then suddenly raised his head and looked at the man in black walking over not far away. "Qinshu, isn't this what the master meant? The man in black is tall and tall, wearing a black robe as cold as frost, with a cold aura, and the whole person is like an unsheathed sword. It is the Qin Shuken whom Nan 11 once met in the Juxiao pavilion on the top of the blue clouds. Young master. Yes, Qin Shu was taciturn and just nodded lightly. The ministers in Dongling are in a hurry, so we have to deal with it. The man playing the piano frowned, seeming troubled. What if Princess Feng really falls in love with me? As soon as he said this, he immediately attracted 3 pairs of contemptuous eyes. You. The young master Fukin was blatantly laughed at, but he didn't get angry at all. It's better to look down on him. I can live for 2 more days. I'm afraid you have to be careful. If this face gets into trouble, be careful that the master will also let others take care of him. Cut off your meat piece by piece, roast it and eat it yourself. That's not the case, the blue-robed young master said slowly. I think the best it can do is scratch his face so that he can no longer use his troubled face to deceive simple and ignorant little girls. Let me tell you a true thing. Qin Shu walked to the river and sat down, carrying a pot and pouring himself a cup of tea. Princess Feng once liked a scholar named Gu when she was in the Zhou dynasty. This scholar was later taken by the master. He was imprisoned in the dungeon of the Prince Regent's palace and suffered so much torture that his legs were almost useless and there was no intact flesh left on his body before he died. It is said that words spoken by taciturn people are usually the most convincing, but at this time I have to doubt the authenticity of the sentence. Xiejin raised his lips. Isn't it because the person named Gu committed suicide? Qin Shu glanced at him. There will always be people in this world who take the initiative to commit suicide. Xiejin chuckled casually, with unparalleled grace. Don't worry, this kind of thing will never happen to me. The young man in blue robe said calmly, when I came out of the house just now, I saw Prince Ji passing by. He should be looking for my general's sister. One of them is delicate and beautiful, and the other is sturdy and heroic. The boy looks like a girl, and the girl holds a male script. It looks interesting. The Chu family has the eldest son Chu Xuanyi, the eldest daughter Chu Hongyi, and a low-key and introverted bastard Chu Nanyi. The man in front of him who is wearing a flowing robe in the winter and dares to wave a fan to pretend to be cool is Chu Nanyi. In addition to the bastard of the Chu family, he is also a member of Juxiao Pavilion. In the eyes of all the powerful families in Dongling, he is the most inconspicuous bastard, but he is the boss behind the entire Dongling Imperial City money bank and ticket shop. He was also jokingly called by Xiejin, the bastard of the Xie family is worthless, and the bastard of the Chu family is priceless. This is really true. He has millions of taels of silver in and out of the account at any time. The silver of every noble family in the imperial capital is in his hands. What is it if not priceless? Chu Nanyi spread out his fan and waved it, blowing his hair slightly. Master really has no bottom line in order to pamper his wife, and he can even make the decision to choose a husband for her. Stupid, Xiejin sneered at him. If he really has no bottom line, what are we doing here? Isn't it just in case? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 322. Chu Nanyi was silent for a moment and insisted on her point of view. There is no bottom line for doting on my wife, otherwise he wouldn't drag us out to use it as a shield. Do you know that this is very dangerous? What if the master becomes jealous one day and thinks of us? We were actually selected by Princess Feng, and she wanted to destroy us indiscriminately. You think too much, Qin Shu said calmly. If the master wants to destroy you, he doesn't need to make so many excuses. Chu Nanyi paused for a moment and nodded politely. Okay, I guess what you said makes sense. The post will be sent to you in the evening, Xiejin said in a lazy voice. Dress up better tomorrow morning and try to be the most beautiful. It sounds like he wants to sell me into a brothel. The man playing the piano twitched his lips and muttered in a low voice, but then again, what is the purpose of the master working so hard? He is planning carefully. Every step of the plan was meticulous, and at one point I thought the master wanted the whole world. Qin Shu's expression was indifferent. maybe this world will really fall into the hands of the master in the end. As soon as these words came out, the other three people fell silent. Xiejin, is your elder brother a little dissatisfied with you recently? Chu Nanyi tilted his head, with a slight smile on his handsome face. He secretly withdrew 30,000 taels of silver from the bank account 2 days ago. Do you know about this? Xiejin said calmly, I'm not interested in his affairs. Then you might as well guess where the money he took was used. 30,000 taels, the man playing the piano frowned, obviously feeling that this matter was a bit unreasonable. How could a mere bastard of the Xie family have the ability to withdraw 30,000 taels of silver at once? He has such great power in the Xie family. As we all know, although the concubine of the Xie family has some status outside, it is because of his father's face, but he has no weight at home. 30,000 taels of silver was not a big sum for a family like the Xie family, but it was not something that a bastard with no identity or status could use at will. Xiejin's eyebrows were tainted with a hint of laziness, and even his sarcasm seemed indifferent. I have been secretly saving money since I was a teenager, and I have been saving it until now. I thought he planned to use this money to marry a wife. I'm buying a betrothal gift. The man playing the piano was named Lingen. Hearing this, he thought thoughtfully, so, this is his private property. Chu Nanyi hummed, what he kept is indeed a private account and will not be used in the Xie family's general ledger. So, he suddenly took out this 30,000 taels of silver to get a wife. Lingen chuckled, then shook his head. My intuition tells me that he is most likely to use this money to pay for the assassination of you. You. After the words fell, 3 pairs of eyes fell on him. Lingen raised his eyebrows. What? Chu Nanyi chuckled, you can go and tell others. Did I guess it right? Lingen raised his eyebrows and then looked at Xiejin. Your life is only worth 30,000 taels. Xiejin glanced sideways at him and said in a lazy voice, do you believe that I can kill you on the spot without spending a penny? Lingen sneered. When night falls, the East Palace bedroom is brightly lit, and the soft lamps cover the pair of people who are close to each other in front of the case. The picture is so beautiful that it seems to have come from the fairy mist. Yan Yu served the tea with lowered eyebrows and stood quietly in an inconspicuous corner. The other palace residents also maintained absolute silence, and no one made a sound. There is a portrait on the desk. They are all young noble men, ranging in age from 16 to early 20. They all have refined looks and outstanding demeanor, which makes people feel dizzy looking at them. Are these noble gentlemen of the imperial capital? Nan 11 looked down at Rong Yu's perfectly trimmed fingertips. The portraits were spread out one by one in front of her eyes, allowing her to see them more clearly, but Nan 11 still suspicion arose, these portraits are all of me. If that was the case, she couldn't help but wonder if Dongling was rich in handsome men. The gentlemen in the portrait are all noble and refined, with their own unique looks. They seem to be in line with the saying that people often like to say, each one is fat or thin, each has his or her own merits. Although the men in front of me are not all fat and thin, they are all of them are indeed outstanding. The painter's skills are good. She smiled lightly. If it were applied to an ordinary woman, everyone would be stunned and not know which one to choose. Rong Yu paused his fingertips slightly and turned his head to look at her. His handsome brows were filled with a hint of sourness. Do you think they are all good looking? Not as good looking as you. Nan 11 kissed his face. With a beautiful husband like you, other men, even if they are as beautiful as gods, cannot catch my eye. Rong Yu narrowed his eyes and sighed, then returned his gaze to the portrait and pointed at 4 of them. This is the only legitimate son of the current chief minister, Xiejin, the 9th son of the Xie family. Nan 11's heart moved slightly as she looked at the delicate and beautiful man in the portrait. He looks young, he should be 17 or 18 years old. The legitimate son of the first assistant. This status is truly valuable, but since Rong Yu was the first to mention him, Nan 11 smiled lightly, feeling reassured. Yes, Rong Yu then pointed to another portrait. This is Chu Nanyi, the concubine of the Chu family, Chu Xuanyi's concubine, and Chu Hongai's second brother. Nan 11 looked at the elegant and handsome young man in the portrait and pondered for a moment. Is it true that only legitimate sons and concubines can participate in the husband-choosing banquet? Both can be done wrong, you said. Choosing a husband is different from choosing a concubine. In the past, when emperors chose concubines, they mostly needed family background, appearance, talent, learning, and temperament. All of them must meet the standards, and the requirements are very strict. But when the queen chooses a husband, she chooses a concubine. It is a man. Most men need to pass on heirs and inherit the bloodline. Therefore, if there is only one legitimate son in the family, there will be very few people who voluntarily enter the palace to become the emperor's wife. These are all issues that need to be considered. If the bastard son is outstanding in talent and appearance, he will also you can enter the palace, but your status won't be too high. Nan 11 didn't know what she thought of, and her eyes fell back on the portrait of Xiejian, the legitimate son of the Xie family. She secretly thought that the high-ranking chief minister had such a precious legitimate son, and he would definitely not be willing to let him enter the palace as the emperor's husband. Then, I will enter tomorrow. Gong, is he here to make up the numbers? Well, everyone who enters the palace tomorrow is actually a make-up, and it's impossible to actually choose a husband anyway. But Nan 11 was still wondering, how did the chief minister's legitimate son get involved with Rong Yu? These two people who were originally out of reach, couldn't they really have subordinates all over the world? And this one Rong Yu put the portraits of Xie and Chu Nanyi aside and picked out another one. This is Qin Shu, you have seen it. Nan 11 was stunned when she saw Qin Shu. Isn't he from Juxiao Pavilion? Rong Yu hummed, he will also enter the palace tomorrow. Nan 11 didn't know what to say for a moment, but Rong Yu was really well prepared to prevent her from choosing a husband. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 323. Who is this person? Nan 11 pointed at a man in a moon-white robe. He looks familiar. Rong Yu's eyes turned slightly and fell on the portrait. Nephews look a lot like their uncles. You think he looks familiar because he looks a little like the king of Wei, the son of the 6th princess of Dongling. His husband's surname is Su, and he is Su Hanyu, the second son of the second branch of the Su family, one of the 4 major families in the Dongling imperial capital. A member of the Su family. Nan 11 frowned. She was not surprised that this person's surname was Su. When the crown prince chooses a husband, the first qualified to enter the palace must be the children of the most prominent families in the imperial capital. The 4 major families in Dongling are Xie, Chu, Su, and Mo. What she found strange was that this person could also be selected to enter the palace as the imperial lady. The 6th princess should be my mother's sister, so isn't Su Hanyu related to me by blood? Nan 11 frowned slightly. According to the relationship, should I call him cousin? In principle, such a relationship can be married. Rong Yu said calmly. Su Hanyu is close to Xianyu Yan, and the former crown prince treats him much better than his own brother. The Su family is rich and powerful, and Xianyu Yan and he are cousins, so it is normal for them to be good friends, Nan 11 said in a light tone, but I don't like this kind of messy relationship. Although the royal family has always had no shortage of marriages between relatives, she just doesn't like it. Before getting married, men and women with blood ties call each other brother and sister, but after getting married, they become husband and wife. It feels awkward no matter how you think about it. Although she is not familiar with Su Hanyu and it is impossible for her to have any close relationship with him, she still thinks this kind of thing is a bit strange. If you don't like it, then don't like it. Don't think too much. Rong Yu poured a cup of tea and handed it to her. It's not surprising that his portrait appears here. No matter whether it is the idea of King Wei or Xianyuan Yan, the Su family will not refuse it. Besides, if he can really enter the palace, it will also be good for the second branch of the Su family. Pick up the teacup and take a sip of tea, he said calmly. The one in power in the Su family is the eldest branch, that is, Su Fuma's brother. The second branch has no other real power except the title of Fuma, so they want to change their situation through the second son. Nan 11 put away the portraits one by one, turned around and walked towards the inner hall with Rong Yu, listening to him talk about the four major families while walking. Su Ce, the current head of the Su family, is in charge of the Ministry of Households. He is a brother of Su Fuma. The eldest son is in power and enters the officialdom, while the second son married the sixth princess and became a Fuma. Marrying a princess naturally brought greater glory to the Su family, making the Su family prominent and making the career of the eldest son of the Su family smoother. However, for Su Fuma, who actually married the sixth princess, there was no practical benefit. The princess's status was precious, but women could not go out and show their faces, and they did not understand power. In recent years, Su Ce has been getting better and better in the court, and his status has become higher and higher. The gap between the first and second houses has naturally widened. The power of the Su family is completely in the hands of the current Changshu Su. After a long time, the second house is unwilling, but Su Fuma cannot enter the officialdom. Fortunately, he and the sixth princess also have a pair of legitimate sons. The eldest son Sulanyu has good knowledge and is preparing to participate in the spring examination during the new year. If everything goes well, he can enter the officialdom. It happened that Princess Feng returned to the imperial capital to establish a crown prince, so he wanted to send the second son Suhanyu to the palace, and he could also do something for his brother's official career. Nan 11 thought silently, the power and officialdom are really complicated and unpredictable. There are calculations everywhere. Family, affection and blood relationship can all be used as bargaining chips to climb up. Ambitious people want to be emperor, but how can they be a good emperor? Just dealing with the deep and complex thoughts of these courtiers' families, knowing what they are thinking, seeing clearly why they do everything, for what purpose, and what effect they want to achieve, it is definitely not an easy task. Nan 11 sighed, Wrong you. I don't think I'm fit to be an emperor. Nan 11 sat down on the brocade couch. People's minds are unpredictable. I can't be all round, nor can I make such a meticulous layout as you. Maybe I'll be plotted against one day. You dash. What are you worried about? Wrong you smiled, aren't I here? Nan 11 looked up at him, compared to you, I feel like I've never stepped out of the safe place of the boudoir. When I look up, I can only see a very small world. But you, when no one knows, quietly laid such a big net, and netted so many outstanding men, making them willing to listen to you. I can't imagine how you did it. The more I think about it, the more I feel that you are so powerful that you can do anything. Of the four major families in Dongling, Rong Yu has already controlled the Xie family and the Chu family. As for the fact that Chu Nanyi is Rong Yu's man, I'm afraid that even Chu Xuanyi and Chu Hong'ai, brother and sister, were kept in the dark, which is incredible. However, when Nan 11 thought about how Rong Yu had planned all these things, she felt depressed. Has this person already set up a chess game in his mind since his childhood, with the world as the board and the powerful masters from all sides as the chess pieces? He didn't have the childhood that others enjoyed, the time that others used to play, and even the opportunity that ordinary nobles invited 3 or 5 friends to drink together. He probably only did reading and martial arts occasionally for outsiders to see, because he didn't need to waste that time at all. His time was too precious, like squeezing a sponge, he used one day as if it were 3 days for others, and he suffered the pain and fatigue by himself, and no one could help him. He didn't want friends, but subordinates who obeyed his orders. Nan 11 felt that it was extremely difficult even to imagine, but Rong Yu had to do it step by step. He was so busy in those years that he had to squeeze out time to rest. The scary thing was that no one had ever discovered what he was doing secretly. Nan 11 praised Rong Yu for his ability, but she felt extremely painful in her heart. The more she understood the power he held, the more she felt distressed. If he regarded the things he did in his previous life as sins, then the price he paid in this life was too high. Careful planning and little by little layout, in the eyes of anyone, should be spent for the sake of competing for the throne. If people knew that such a reason was just for a woman. Nan 11's mind was bitter and complicated, and she said softly, "After tomorrow's flower viewing banquet, I will no longer pay attention to those people's memorials like ghosts. As an empress of a country, if I can't even decide how many husbands I want in this life and who I will spend the rest of my life with, then I'd better not be an empress." Rong Yu looked down at her unhappy expression, reached out and lifted a strand of hair from her temples, and smiled softly. "Tomorrow is not a husband selection banquet, it is mainly for you to meet more people, and not all men enter the palace. Don't mind, I don't mind." Author's words. Online texts are a little exaggerated and occasionally illogical. Babies just enjoy it and don't delve too deeply. Window. Taboola equals window. Taboola. Taboola.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, Taboola below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 324. When he said he didn't mind, he really didn't mind, Nan 11 could tell. Because it wasn't originally a husband-choosing banquet. Nan 11 stretched out her hand and pulled him over to sit next to her, with a soft voice, "From now on, I will be responsible for being a pampered queen, and you will be in charge of everything outside." Rong Yu said nothing and quietly held her in his arms. Nan 11 leaned on his arm quietly and pondered for a moment. "Rong Yu. If I don't be a diligent and wise queen, will you be disappointed?" Rong Yu frowned slightly. "Why are you disappointed?" "Because the Empress Jinghua in her previous life was an empress with unparalleled sage and wisdom. Rong Huijin should like such a woman." Rong Yu lowered his head and kissed her forehead. "You already said that Rong Huijin liked it, but Rong Huijin is already dead." Nan 11 said nothing. Rong Huijin is dead, but Rong Yu still retains Rong Huijin's memory. "What I like is you as a person, not how much you can contribute to the country, nor how much you have the world in mind," Rong Yu said with a low and sweet voice, "so don't think too much, eh?" Nan 11 chuckled with a bright smile. "Yes. Did the baby have any fuss today?" Nan 11 caressed her bulging belly. "No, I feel like he seems quite quiet. He moves occasionally, but he doesn't look like a child of more than 5 months." Rong Yu said, "It should be a boy, his temperament seems to be relatively calm." "Calm?" Nan 11 laughed. "Why didn't you say you were a quiet little girl?" Rong Yu was silent for a moment. It was rare that he didn't follow her words, but insisted on his own point of view. "It's a boy." "Why?" Nan 11 was really surprised. "You don't like girls? Didn't he say before that his daughter should be pampered?" "I like it," Rong Yu said. "Boys can be trained to be emperors as early as possible." Nan 11 didn't expect that this was what he had in mind, and was silent for a moment. "She hasn't even ascended the throne yet, and he is planning to abdicate in favor of his son? Can't my daughter be the emperor?" Rong Yu said softly, "If she wants to, she can." On the one hand, the power he has established is for Nan 11, and on the other hand, it is also so that Nan 11 can abdicate early in the future. Even if his son ascends the throne at the age of 7, he will still have enough loyal ministers and generals to assist him loyally. The power he has established is enough to control all countries. Therefore, Even if Dongling can only have a queen every 200 years, instead of a princess inheriting the throne naturally, he can break this convention. But privately speaking, Rongyu did not want his daughter to inherit the throne. Zhongshan Shiji has a heavy responsibility, and it is too heavy to place on the shoulders of a girl. She has to face some covetous and ambitious foxes all day long. Even if there is help, it is inevitable to worry and work hard. It's late, go take a shower. Nan 11 hummed, and Rongyu picked her up and headed towards the bathing hall. After bathing, she put on a loose robe. Even though the palace was burning with earth dragons and it was much warmer than outside, Rongyu still put a thin cloak on her and carried her from the bath hall to the bed. The swollen belly became more and more obvious. Nan 11 was half lying on the bed, gently stroking her abdomen. Recently, she liked to do this action very much. After bathing every night, she would lean on the bedside and get close to the child like this, feeling the little life slowly growing up in her belly. Inherited her and Rongyu's bloodline, from birth to adulthood, she may have followed Rongyu's temperament, being calm and taciturn yet powerful and awe-inspiring. Nan 11 would even sketch a miniature version of Rongyu in her mind, and then she would smile heartily, with a mother's gentle and loving glow in her eyes. You can't pamper a boy. Rongyu lay beside her, stretched out his long arms and pulled her into his arms. The cool breath after taking a bath firmly surrounded her, and even his voice was somewhat bewitching. The emperor cannot be pampered, he must be taught strictly. Nan 11 lay meekly in his arms and corrected him, you must be strict with your children, but not harsh. The person who will be the emperor in the future cannot be pampered. Nan 11 was silent, I didn't say I wanted to pamper him. Doesn't being strict mean being coddled? Rongyu's realization really made her don't know what to say. However, through these short conversations, Nan 11 could already predict what kind of strict father the child would face after he was born. She felt that as a loving mother, she should give the child his rights before he was born. Fight for it? Rongyu. Nan 11 sat up, her expression serious and solemn, let's discuss it? Rongyu looked at her, as if he was studying her expression, what's the point of discussing? I'll do whatever you say, no need to discuss. No, this matter does need to be discussed. I cannot have my own way. Nan 11 said, as for children, I think children must have a child's childhood. What do you think? Rongyu nodded, well, you are right. Children are young and cannot be compared with adults. Even if they need to be taught well, they cannot use the same method you use to train soldiers in the military camp. It will be too much for children, what do you think? Rongyu pondered for a moment and nodded slowly, yes. So, the child's education should be gradual and strict with kindness, that is, not only to let him understand the strictness of his father, but also to let him feel the love of his parents, right? Rongyu couldn't help but curl up the corners of his lips as he listened to the words that seemed to be guiding a child, and his voice became deeper, yes, you are right. Nan 11 felt that he was still very open-minded, so she lay back in his arms at ease, don't worry, it won't grow up in one day anyway, take your time. At this time, Nan 11 felt that Rongyu was gentle and could listen to what she said, so she quickly put her mind at ease. However, she overlooked one thing. Rongyu's gentleness has always been given to her alone. In front of other people, whether it is the enemy on the battlefield, the opponent in the court, or even the soldiers in the barracks and his loyal subordinates, if you ask anyone about Rongyu's temperament and methods of doing things, they will never use the word gentle to describe Rongyu. Even for his own son, Rongyu insisted on the principle that boys need to be tempered, so that in the future, when educating his son, his severity was almost as severe as training soldiers in the barracks, which once made Nan 11 feel so distressed that she almost thought her son was picked up. But this is a later story. The night deepened and the lights flickered. Nan 11 leaned against Rongyu's forehead and whispered, sleep well tonight. Get enough sleep, and you will feel better tomorrow. If you have never had a good rest before, then from now on, you must go to bed on time every night to make up for all the sleep time you lost before. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 325. The next morning, the weather was pretty good. There was a chill in the morning air that penetrated into the bones. Yu Etong led the palace people to help Nan 11 dress up and wash up. She put on a crimson robe of the crown prince. Her hairpins and hair accessories were all chosen in noble styles that fit her status. It looked so beautiful and unattainable. Yunyu looked at it for a while, then decided to put a red plum blossom flower blossom between her eyebrows. Today is the Plum Blossom Appreciation Banquet, and this flower blossom is quite beautiful for the occasion. Nan 11 looked in the mirror. The fine red plum blossom-shaped pearls are reflected in the center of the eyebrows, adding a touch of beauty to the delicate and fair skin, dazzling like fire, and making her look even more noble and unparalleled. All women love beauty, and Nan 11 is no exception. I think this looks good too, she smiled. You can dress up like this often in the future and change the look from time to time to add freshness. Yunyu nodded with a smile. Be careful of charming the prince. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and said in an extremely confident tone, even if I don't post this, I can still charm him to death. Yunyu smiled. Master is right. Nan 11 stood up, turned around and walked outside. She happened to see Rong Yu, who was wearing a gold woven and black brocade robe, walking in from the outside. Their eyes met. The color in their eyes was so gentle that the palace people standing beside them were so gentle. You can feel the deep affection. Have you packed it up? Nan 11 nodded, yes. Rong Yu reached out and took the cloak handed over by Yin Yu and put it on Nan 11's shoulders, folded it carefully, then took her hand, turned and walked out. The noble ladies of the imperial capital who were invited by Princess Feng had already entered the plum garden. The gentlemen were sitting in twos and threes in the warm pavilion of the plum garden, drinking tea and chatting. The noble ladies were scattered in the garden, reciting poems to the plum blossoms in groups, or chatting and laughing in a low voice. The garden was full of noble ladies from noble families, one wearing a fox fur cloak, the other wearing a fur cloak, which suited the cold winter. A lot of people came today, and nearly half of them were from the Xianyuan royal family alone. Xuanyuan, the eldest son of Prince Wei, was not feeling well and the weather was cold right now, so he was afraid that his body and bones would not be able to bear it, so he did not enter the palace. However, his concubine Xianyuan Chen was invited, as well as Prince Huai's eldest son Xianyuan Yu, the young Princess Xianyuan Dan, and Prince Jing's mansion. The Prince Xianyuan Qi, the concubine Xianyuan Hua, the concubine Xianyuan Xia, and the Huainan king's two children Xianyuan Yao and Xianyuan Swiling. The Chu family from the four major families came more often. The three brothers and sisters were all present, which inevitably attracted a lot of attention and speculation. Chu Hong'ai and Chu Xuanyi were just here, but Chu Nanyi was also here. It seems that Princess Feng does have some differences towards the Chu family. I wonder if it is because Chu Hong'ai escorted the eldest princess to Dazhu to pick up Princess Feng, and was the first to have the opportunity to show her face in front of Princess Feng. Su Zhenzhen, the first daughter-in-law of the Su family, and Su Hanyu, the second son Su Hanyu, the second wife Su's consort. The Mo family has a legitimate son, Mo Suanwu, and a legitimate daughter, Mo Lian. The Xie family has their legitimate son Xie Jin. Fang Lanyi, a girl from the town's official residence. There are also Ji Weiner, Qin Shu, Mo Lingan. The name on the invitation came to Nan 11's mind, and she secretly thought that there might be a storm coming together today, and she didn't know what kind of waves it would cause. Princess Feng held a banquet for the first time and invited many people. Although some men knew that this was a less strict husband selection banquet, in fact, it was a normal plum blossom appreciation banquet, so the royal family's children came to participate. Quite a few people feel more relaxed and at ease now that they have less psychological burden. But being too relaxed and comfortable is not good either. The scenery here is really nice. Siejin, who was wearing a jade white brocade robe, was sitting on the railing of the attic, casually looking at the crowds scattered in the plum garden. The handsome young man and the beautiful girl made the garden full of winter plums. A touch of spring, the men are handsome and the women are pretty, eye-catching. This is the benefit of being an emperor. Emolingan, who was leaning on the railing, said calmly, "You can collect all the beauties in the world in an honest and fair manner. It's a pity that we can only take a look." Chu Nanyi sat next to the table, putting the folding fan aside, holding a cup of hot tea and sipping gently. "Our master is a very jealous person, let alone now, even now after Princess Feng ascends the throne. I'm afraid this harem will be in vain." "Why, do you really want to go into the harem and try it out?" Siejing glanced sideways at him, his red and phoenix eyes flashing with elegance. "Do you want me to give you a nice word? You're probably afraid that I won't die fast enough." Chu Nanyi smiled faintly, his eyes falling on a person in the garden. "If you are really bored and want to kill someone, why not send this young man up here? I see that he should interested in the harem." Siejin followed his line of sight and saw a man in a moon-white brocade robe sitting at a stone table with a book. There were two young gentlemen surrounding him, as if they were studying knowledge. The man among them was the second son of Prince Consort Suhanyu. There was a hint of ridicule on the corner of Siejin's mouth, and he expressed his lack of interest in this person with silence. He moved his eyes slightly and looked further into the plum forest. "Did Prince Chi come to Princess Feng's flower viewing banquet today to talk about love?" Qin Shu and Emolingan, who were standing on the railing, turned to look at him when they heard this. They noticed where his gaze fell and followed him. Sure enough, they saw the beautiful Qi Shizi and Chu Hong'ai in the plum forest far away from the crowd. The two of them didn't know what they were talking about. Qi Shizi had a slight smile on his face and looked at Chu Hong'ai with eyes that made Siejin and others who were dozens of feet away feel tender and pampered. "I heard that Princess Jing and Mrs. Zhenguo have been getting closer recently." Siejin looked away and said in a calm voice, "Nanyi, your sister doesn't seem to be liked by Princess Jing." Chu Nanyi said, "Princess Jing likes people with a docile temperament, and Miss Fang from Zhenguo Palace is more to her liking." As soon as the voice fell, Fang Lanyi, who was dressed in an especially elegant and beautiful manner today, walked towards Prince Chi and Chu Hong'ai with two maids. Chu Nanyi's eyes were subtle, and he slowly lowered his eyes and sipped his tea. "This Miss Fang seems to be interested in Prince Chi." Emoling stroked his chin. "Nanyi, your sister has a competitor." Chu Nanyi smiled faintly. Prince Chi can still tell the difference between pearls and fish eyes. In the plum garden, Fu Chen whispered to coax the little ancestor, "Everything else is up to you, and the marriage is up to me, okay? I'll talk to my cousin later." Prince Chi Fang Lanyi bowed slightly, interrupting the conversation between Fu Chen and Chu Hong'ai. "Lanyi is presumptuous to interrupt, please forgive me, Prince Chi." Fu Chen frowned, turned to look at Miss Fang who came uninvited, and said lightly, "Since you know you are being presumptuous, you should stay away from us." "Miss Fang, didn't you see what we are talking about?" Fang Lanyi's face changed slightly, and she lowered her eyebrows and said, "Lanyi wants to talk to the prince alone, I wonder if the prince can dash." No. Fu Chen's voice became fainter. "Men and women should not touch each other, please respect yourself, Miss Fang." Fang Lanyi bit her lip, her beautiful face flushed slightly, looking a little embarrassed and a little pitiful. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 326. Just at this moment, another woman's voice sounded, "What my cousin said is not quite right. Since men and women are not intimate, why can my cousin and General Chu talk alone here? Isn't General Chu a woman? Fukin frowned and looked coldly at the woman who came over. Ji Weiner, the daughter of the Ji family, was also his other cousin. But she was not the cousin of the Xianyuan royal family, but the niece of Princess Jing, the daughter of his uncle's family. Fukin was not in the imperial capital all year round, so he was not familiar with her, and he was never polite to people he was not familiar with. Who do I need to get permission from Miss Ji to meet or talk to, he said in a cold tone. Besides, Chu Hongii is my fiancé, who do you think you are? Fang Lanyi's face turned pale and she bit her lip unconsciously, looking like she had been shocked. Why did my cousin say that? Ji Weiner looked at him in shock, as if she couldn't believe she would hear such words. We are cousins, aren't we closer than Chu Hongii? She hasn't married into Jing yet. As for the palace, besides, my aunt has not agreed to let her marry in. Do you think she is very close to you? Fukin's expression suddenly turned cold, and he was about to speak when Chu Hongii gently held his hand. He turned to look at Chu Hongii. It's your turn to comment on my relationship with Xianyuan Qi. Chu Hongii's eyebrows were stern, and her voice was as cold as ice. Who do you think you are? Ji Weiner's expression changed. What did you say? Chu Hongii's eyebrows were cold and she repeated impatiently, this general is asking you, who do you think you are? The corners of Fukin's mouth curled up slightly. You. Ji Weiner obviously didn't expect that Chu Hongii would dare to treat her like this, and she was furious. Do you know that my aunt loves me the most? How dare you scold me? Chu Hongii narrowed her eyes. Get out. What did you say? Ji Weiner froze. You dare to tell me to get out? She almost thought she heard wrong. Chu Hongii actually dared to tell her to get out? This woman who wanted to marry into Prince Jing's palace actually dared to ask her to get out? General Chu treats Miss Ji like this because he has military power. Fang Lanyi raised his eyes and looked at her. Wanner is the niece of Princess Jing and the cousin of Prince Ji. They are a family, General Chu. Who is a family with whom? Fukin frowned and looked at Fang Lanyi displeasedly. Ji Wanner's surname is Ji, and my eldest son's surname is Xianyuan. How can we be a family? If we really want to talk about a family, he and Hongyi are a real family, so don't have random relationships. Fang Lanyi hesitated. Wanner is the prince's cousin. Fukin's attitude was indifferent. What kind of relationship does she have with me? There is no need for Miss Fang to remind me deliberately. What do you mean, cousin? Ji Weiner was furious, pointing at Chu Hongii angrily. You dare to contradict your aunt because of her, and let her worry about you, but do you know that she is behind your back? What have you done? Chu Hongii is not worthy of your liking at all. She is just a wanton woman. Snap! There was a crisp sound. The air seemed to become quiet for an instant. Ji Weiner covered her face and stared at Fukin blankly, her eyes full of shock and disbelief. Fang Lanyi's face suddenly changed due to the slap. Qi Shize. Do you want to die? Fukin's voice was cold, and his eyes were filled with a frightening chill. If you want to die, I can help you. You. Ji Weiner had tears in her eyes, her face turned pale and red, and her tone became fierce involuntarily. You actually hit me for her? Cousin, do you know that she has someone else's love behind your back? Child. This unmarried woman is already unclean. Cousin, don't be deceived by her, she is a shameless woman. Snap. The crisp and loud slap sounded again. Fang Lanyi was shocked. Ji Weiner's cheeks were swollen, her fingerprints were clearly visible, and the shock in her eyes had turned into horror. My prince has never hit women, except for those who are mean-mouthed. Fukin shook off his numb hand from overexertion, his eyebrows were cold, and he looked at Ji Wanner with a bone-chilling look. Starting from today, Prince Jing's mansion and Ji Weiner will all contact with the family is cut off, and no one from the Ji family will be allowed to step into Prince Jing's palace again for the rest of their lives. Ji Wanner's face turned pale. Interesting. Lingon in the attic looked at the scene in Merlin and raised his eyebrows. This girl from the Fang family seems to be quite scheming. She stood aside weakly and let Ji Wanner step forward to argue for her. When she got angry, Prince Ji, it is Ji Wanner who bears the wrath. Do you think that if such a woman really married Prince Ji, would General Chu be her opponent? Opponent, Xieji was dismissive of the woman's scheming, with a touch of mockery in his voice. Chu Hongii can crush her to death with one finger, why do you still need to play scheming with her? Chu Nanyi was standing quietly aside, but suddenly turned to look at the winding corridor outside the plum garden. Here we come. After these two words fell, Xiejin, who was sitting in the chair, turned his eyes slightly, and then stood up slowly. A jade-white brocade robe fell down as he stood up. The hem of the robe was made of bamboo embroidered with silver thread. The lines were shining with silvery luster. He elegantly adjusted his eyes and straightened his robes, turned around and walked down the stairs. Let's go, get ready to welcome Princess Fang. Please, Miss Fang, please stay away from me and General Chu from now on. Fukin turned his eyes slightly and glanced at Fang Lanyi very coldly. I am not interested in you, and I hope Miss Fang knows how to respect herself and love herself. After saying this, he ignored Fang Lanyi's instantly pale face, turned to Chu Hongii and said, let's go first. Chu Hongii nodded. Chu Hongii, wait, Ji Wanner glared at Chu Hongii fiercely, her eyes filled with hatred as if she was spitting poison. I'm going to tell my aunt that I will never let you marry into Prince Jing's mansion. Princess Feng has arrived, a high-pitched announcement sounded outside the garden, interrupting Ji Wanner's threat. The Prince Regent has arrived. The princesses, noble ladies, and young princes scattered in the plum garden all walked towards one place. Ji Wanner glanced at Chu Hongii resentfully, suppressed the gloom in her eyes, turned to Fang Lanyi and said, let's go. Fang Lanyi nodded lightly, but still couldn't help but look at Fukin and said softly, Prince Ji, I do have something important to tell you. Please give me this opportunity later. After saying that, as if he was afraid that Fukin would refuse, he hurriedly folded his arms and said, I'm sorry to bother you. Then he turned around and walked in the direction of Princess Feng with Ji Wanner. Fukin was too lazy to pay attention to the dark thoughts between these daughters' families. He sighed softly and took the initiative to hold Chu Hongyi's hand. It's better to get married as soon as possible, so that no one will always miss your husband. I have been fasting and chanting Buddha's name lately, and I don't want to kill any living beings, Chu Hongyi said calmly, otherwise she wouldn't have had so many opportunities to speak. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 327. Fukin's gloomy mood instantly improved due to her words, and the corners of his lips raised, to accumulate blessings for our children. Chu Hongii hummed. Although I also think it's not good to kill in front of children, it's still okay to give some lessons to those who take the initiative to beat them. Fukin's tone became more relaxed, and he took her hand and walked outside the plum garden. After all, we have to set an example and tell our children not to tolerate it blindly and to take action when it's time to take action. Chu Hongii seemed to agree with what he said, but she didn't refute it. Chu Xuanyi, your concubine has a good relationship with Xiejin. When Su Hanyu stood up to greet him, he casually glanced in the direction of the attic stairs and spoke with meaning. Chu Xuanyi followed his line of sight and saw Xiejin and Chu Nanyi walking down side by side, followed by Mo Lingon and another man in black robes. His eyes were thoughtful. Maybe Xie's little ninth master has a withdrawn temperament, and his eyes are higher than the top. It's rare to find anyone who catches his eye. Your concubine can even climb up to him. He seems to be quite capable. Su Hanyu chuckled. the relationship with Xiejin should not be that good. Chu Xuanyi said calmly, Nanyi's ability to climb up to Xiejin is indeed due to his ability. I can't see it. Su Hanyu shook his head. The ninth master of the Xie family is very arrogant and has never looked down upon the bastard. The bastard of the Xie family has no status at all in front of him. He treated Chu Nanyi like this. Don't you think there's a problem? Chu Xuanyi Quan didn't think he heard his provocation. What's the problem? Su Hanyu glanced at him, with a gentle smile on her lips. Don't think too much, I just find it strange. After all, the relationship between the Chu family and the Xie family has never been very friendly. Your second brother is so upright and honest. When I interact with Xiejin, I am afraid that they have some unknown relationship and you are just kept in the dark. Chu Xuanyi smiled lightly and glanced in the direction of Chu Nanyi casually. A flash of deep thought flashed in his eyes, and then he closed his eyes to hide all the emotional fluctuations in his eyes. At the entrance of the huge plum garden, the princes and ladies bowed their eyebrows respectfully and saluted. I've met Princess Feng, and I've met the regent. Nan 11 and Rong Yu were walking on the corridor, looking at the gentlemen and ladies in front of them with lowered eyebrows and downcast eyes. They were really handsome, and they felt dazzled for a moment. Looking around, almost all the noble ladies were wearing thick cloaks to keep warm. Those who were afraid of the cold even held an exquisite small hand stove to keep warm. Nan 11 raised a smile on her lips and said gently, no courtesy, please take your seats. Seating tables for men and women had already been set up in the Miwen Flower Hall, and the tables were filled with various refreshments and seasonal fruits. Originally, after Princess Feng's words, everyone should have taken their seats. However, these gentlemen and ladies were all descendants of aristocratic families. When they met for the first time, they were full of curiosity about Princess Feng and the regent who came from the great Zhou dynasty. After saluting, they couldn't help but quietly raised their eyes to look at her. However, his eyes touched Nan 11's stunning face and Regent Rong Yajun's cold and delicate face. Before he could marvel, he suddenly heard a cry of surprise. What's wrong with Miss G's face? I don't know who made this voice, but as soon as the words fell, a look of suspicion appeared on everyone's face. Then they turned to look at Ji Wan'er. When they saw the obviously bruised fingerprints on her face, most people's faces were filled with confusion. The expressions were all surprised. The red and swollen cheek was obviously beaten. But who dares to hit her? Although the Ji family is not among the four major families, it is still a well-known official family. Moreover, Ji Wan'er is the niece of Princess Jing, and she was also invited by Princess Feng today. Who dares to do something to her? The people who had just filled the garden were scattered everywhere, and they did not notice what happened to Ji Wan'er just now. A sob sounded. Ji Wan'er's eyes were red and tears flowed down her cheeks. The maid beside her quickly stepped forward to wipe her tears. Miss, stop crying. Fang Lanyi bowed lightly and said softly, there was a little misunderstanding just now. Misunderstanding? Xian Yuan's willing frowned, and his eyes fell on Ji Wan'er's face. What misunderstanding can make such a good girl like this? It's obvious that the face is a man's handprint. What kind of man can be so worthless that he can even mess with a girl? Can you do it? I did it, Fukin said calmly. As soon as he opened his mouth, the others were even more surprised, with shocked expressions on their faces. Prince Ji. Ji Wan'er wiped away her tears, lowered her red and swollen eyes, lowered her head and choked with sobs. Please, Your Highness, please let me make the decision. The curious people looked at each other in confusion, but those who saw the scene where Fu Chen made his move remained silent. They each walked to the flower hall and found a seat to sit down. Nan 11 glanced at the girl who was speaking, Miss Ji. Ji Wan'er bent her knees slightly, choked with sobs and said, My dear Ji Wan'er, please see Princess Feng. What's going on? Ji Wan'er bit her lip and lowered her head in silence. The tears she had just wiped away flowed down her cheeks again. Let me tell you, Fukan said calmly, she said something rude to Hong Yi. I was not happy, so I beat her. Fang Lanyi said softly, it's just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, Fukan raised his lips coldly, Ms. Fang means, is it a misunderstanding that Miss G said something rude, or is it a misunderstanding that I hit her? Fang Lanyi pursed her lips, that's not what I meant. The rude words should not be serious enough to take action, Su Hanyu said to smooth things over. Besides, General Chu is a military general with a broad mind. He should not care about Miss G's innocent words. Nan 11 glanced at him and said calmly, I really want to know what Miss G said. Was it an unintentional mistake or intentional? Su Hanyu was slightly surprised, as if he did not expect Princess Feng to be so straightforward. He pondered for a moment, no matter what Miss G said, Prince G is a man after all. It is not good to hit a girl. Besides, Miss G is thin-skinned and has been wronged this time. I think Prince G should apologize to Miss G. Let's just let it go. What do you think of Prince G? Fu Chen said coldly, Mr. Su is very good at being a man. Su Hanyu's face showed a bit of embarrassment, and then he smiled faintly, a man should not care about women. It is unmannerly. What is manners? Fu Chen mocked casually, can it be eaten? Su Hanyu's expression froze instantly. Please don't be so aggressive, my lord. Ji Wana raised her hand to wipe away her tears and said coldly, yes, I was the first to speak rudely, but was I wrong? Chu Hong Ai is pregnant before getting married. This is so immoral and shameful for women. She can do such a shameful thing, why can't I say anything? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 328. Chu Hong Ai is pregnant? Everyone turned to look at Chu Hong Ai in surprise, and the atmosphere became subtle for a while. It was indeed immoral for an unmarried woman to be pregnant. But most of the young men and ladies present were from prominent families, and their upbringing and rules were very strict. Today was the first time they met Princess Feng. No one spoke for a while, but their eyes were already revealing some incredible colors. Chu Xuanyi frowned slightly. Hong Ai is pregnant? Nan 11 looked at Ji Waner and said in a light tone, how do you know that General Chu is pregnant? Ji Waner paused, Nan 11 stroked her abdomen gently, looking at Ji Waner calmly, my belly is more than 5 months, you can see that I am pregnant at a glance, but you said that General Chu is pregnant, how can you see it from where? Ji Waner hesitated for a moment, turned her head and looked at Fang Lanyi. Seeing her like this, everyone's eyes could not help but drift to Fang Lanyi. What are you looking at Miss Fang for? Nan 11 said calmly, did Miss Fang tell you? Fang Lanyi's face changed slightly, and she unconsciously tightened the handkerchief in her hand, obviously not expecting to face such an interrogation. Ji Waner's expression changed again and again, and she was a little incoherent, the point is not who told me, but Chu Hong Ai did something immoral. No, Nan 11 smiled faintly, but her eyebrows revealed a cold and majestic look, how did you know about this matter? It is very important. This palace must find out, because it is related to a woman's reputation and upbringing. Her gentle and tough attitude obviously surprised everyone present. Xiejian, Mo Ling'an, and Chu Nanyi were all secretly looking at this woman who was protected by their master like a treasure, and the other Xianyuan royal family princes, princesses, and noble sons who also met for the first time also looked at Nan 11 calmly. There was deep thought, curiosity, surprise, and amazement in everyone's eyes. Nan 11 pretended not to notice all kinds of emotions. Even Rong Yu beside her did not react to everyone's gaze. Princess Feng held a flower viewing banquet for the first time, just to get to know the nobles and ladies of the major families. It was expected that everyone was curious about her. Only by observing her can they make judgments. With judgments, they will know what kind of temperament and temper this Princess Feng has. Ji Wan'er was obviously a little nervous. Why does your highness keep questioning Miss Ji? Su Hanyu raised his eyebrows. I think it is not a graceful thing for Prince Ji to attack a weak girl. Your highness should let Prince Ji apologize to Miss Ji first. As for whether what Miss Ji said is true, let the imperial physician come to check her pulse and we will know. What he said sounded reasonable. Several women nearby nodded in agreement. Yes, what Mr. Su said makes sense. As long as the imperial physician confirms that General Chu is really pregnant, then Miss Ji is not abusing General Chu for no reason, and Prince Ji has no legitimate reason to take action. He should apologize to Miss Ji. That's right, this is the only way to convince people with reason. If Miss Ji wronged General Chu, then the imperial physician can also restore General Chu's innocence after taking his pulse. If Miss Ji's nonsense ruined General Chu's reputation, she should also apologize to Prince Ji and General Chu. In this way, Prince Ji can forget about the impulsive action. Nan 11 had a calm expression and a calm demeanor. She listened to everyone talking, but did not express her opinion. She only looked at Ji Wan'er. I still want to know, how did you judge that General Chu was pregnant? Could it be that you are a doctor and can see General Chu's physical condition at a glance? Everyone was surprised and looked at Nan 11. What does this Princess Feng mean? If she is pregnant or not, wouldn't it be known if we summon the imperial physician to check her pulse? Why do we have to ask her to the end? Ji Wan'er looked at Fang Lanyi again, obviously asking for help from Fang Lanyi. Noticing the looks cast on her, Fang Lanyi suppressed her panic and whispered, I told her. Everyone was shocked. The gentle and dignified girl from the Fang family would actually talk about others in private? Nan 11 said, how did Miss Fang know? Fang Lanyi bit her lip and her voice became lower. I accidentally saw that General Chu seemed to be unwell, like a woman's nausea and vomiting reaction. So you are shouting everywhere that General Chu is pregnant before marriage, Nan 11 said in a light tone. Is this the upbringing of your Genkuo mansion, or are all the noble ladies of Dongling so big-mouthed, just afraid that the world will not be in chaos? As soon as these words came out, the air suddenly became quiet. Fang Lanyi's face turned pale, and she looked up at Nan 11 in disbelief. Your Highness. How can Princess Feng speak like that? Fang Zhenzhen frowned and spoke unkindly. Although Princess Feng has lived in Dezhou for many years and has no sense of identity with Dongling, she should not have such prejudice against the noble lady of Dongling as soon as she came back. How dare you? Nan 11's Aunt Su looked at her coldly. Are you blaming your Highness now? Fang Zhenzhen's face changed, and she knelt down quickly, lowering her eyebrows and said, I dare not, please forgive me, your Highness. Miss Fang, do you think my words have wronged you? Nan 11 ignored her, and her usually calm and gentle eyes fell on Fang Lanyi's face. Are you a doctor? Fang Lanyi was speechless. If you are not a doctor, how can you conclude that General Chu is pregnant just from her little discomfort? The color on Fang Lanyi's face faded. She could not stand Nan 11's relentless questioning. She lowered her head and knelt down, her eyes slightly red. I know I am wrong. You should admit your mistake. Nan 11 glanced at her coldly, then slowly raised her eyes and looked at the noble ladies in front of her who were silent. So do you think I am wronging you, or do you have prejudice against the noble ladies of Dongling? I believe everyone present knows how important a daughter's reputation is. But you can judge that a woman is pregnant just from a small detail that you are not sure of, and announce it to the world in fear of chaos. Is this the upbringing of you noble ladies of Dongling? Fang Zhenzhen's face was hot. She alone cannot represent all the noble ladies of Dongling. One person, Nan 11 smiled lightly, obviously there are two. Fang Zhenzhen reacted instantly. In addition to Fang Lanyi, there is also Ji Wan'er. Although Ji Wan'er was convinced that Chu Hong'ai was pregnant before marriage after listening to Fang Lanyi's words, she was indeed uneducated to abuse Chu Hong'ai when she was not sure. These two people have extraordinary family backgrounds, and they are both legitimate daughters. Fang Zhenzhen was speechless for a moment. One person cannot represent all, and two people cannot represent all, but there are only so many noble ladies coming today. It is not a good thing to leave such an impression on Princess Feng when they first met. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 329. The young masters looked at Princess Feng in silence, each with their own thoughts in mind. I thought that Princess Feng, who came from the great Zhou dynasty, was just an ordinary rich girl, but I didn't expect that she would be so impressive and majestic. When they first met, she assumed the posture of a prince. She looked gentle and her tone of voice was not deliberate when she spoke. Raising the height can make people feel absolute pressure, rather than bluffing. Looking at the silent regent next to her, he is dignified and handsome, with a calm and steady aura like Yu Ji Yuanting. Even if he doesn't say a word, the noble demeanor revealed around him is impossible to ignore. Miss Fang is too impatient, Nan 11 said calmly. Today I invite you to the palace to attend the flower viewing banquet because I am new here and want to get to know you first. I have no intention of favoring anyone, but as the legitimate daughter of a famous family, Miss Fang has received a noble upbringing since she was a child. She should know what kind of impact some words will have on others and how much harm they will bring to others. If you can't even think of these, it can only prove that your upbringing at home is bad. Failed. Fang Lanyi's face was pale and she lowered her head without saying a word, looking quite weak, helpless, and pitiful. General Chu is indeed pregnant, Nan 11 said immediately, ignoring the surprised reactions of the people present, but she is not pregnant out of wedlock, because she has become the legitimate heir to the throne. Wife. What? Everyone was shocked and looked up at Nan 11 in confusion. Nan 11 said in a calm tone, Prince Ji went to Dazhu to take me back. I was originally unwilling to do so because I like a stable lifestyle and am used to the living environment of Dazhu, and I want to follow you in Dazhu. Wrong, you got married, became his wife, and became the regent princess who was more than 10,000 people in the great Zhou dynasty. She didn't want to worry about the country, and she didn't believe in the will of the gods. But later, General Chu escorted my mother to the great Zhou dynasty and told me about Dongling. After some things, I was convinced by her and unwilling to disappoint my mother, so I agreed to come back to Tangling, but I put forward a condition. As she said that, she glanced at Fukan and Chu Hong'ai. Everyone knows that Qi Shizi is good looking, and General Chu is a heroic woman. I have never seen such a well-matched and special couple before, so the condition for agreeing to return to Dongling was that General Chu must first marry Qi Shizi, so they got married in Dazhu in September this year and became a legitimate couple. After the words fell, the expressions of Ji Weiner and Fang Lanyi changed. The expressions of others also varied, and surprise appeared on everyone's face. Got married? Only Chu Xuanyi, who was familiar with the situation, had a slightly subtle look on his face. He thought Princess Feng was a gentle and calm woman, but he didn't expect that she could be so calm when she opened her eyes and told lies. She was neither arrogant nor impetuous, neither fast nor slow, and she told the truth. Same. If he hadn't gone to Dazhu in person, he would have almost believed her words. However, if Hongyi is really pregnant, it will indeed harm her reputation. The marriage is between the two of them, but back in Dongling, the marriage between the two is also a matter between the Prince Jing's mansion and the Chu family. Witnessed by the major families and people of Dongling, Prince Ji and Chu the general should hold another wedding, Nan 11 said lightly, turning to look at General Chu. Although General Chu has a military rank, he has never had his own general mansion. If General Chu feels the need, I will go and speak to the emperor's grandfather and ask him to grant you a general's palace. Chu Hong'ai bowed slightly, "Thank you, Your Highness." Nan 11 hummed and turned to Fukin. "Yesterday morning, I asked the imperial physician to check General Chu's pulse. She is indeed pregnant. Cousin, it seems that you, as a husband, have neglected your duty." "Yes," Fukin admitted humbly, "I will prepare the details of the wedding after I return, and strive to make the relationship between husband and wife more legitimate as soon as possible, and never let Hong'ai suffer innocent criticism again." Nan 11 heard this. "This is your own business, and I will not interfere." After saying that, she said calmly, "Miss Fang and Miss Ji, please get up. Today's incident has been revealed and it will not happen again in the future." Fang Lan thanked her, but her face felt hot and embarrassed. Ji Wan'er was ashamed and annoyed, but she couldn't say anything because she was indeed in the wrong. The most important thing was that Princess Feng didn't punish her except for a few accusations, so she couldn't even refute. Princess Feng has just returned to Dongling. Although she has become the crown prince, her status is lower than that of 10,000 people, but the status of the noble ladies of the major families in the imperial capital is equally prominent. If she puts on the air of Princess Feng and punishes her as soon as she comes up, she will not let it go. People are convinced, even if there are sufficient reasons for the punishment, the nobles and nobles of the major families will be a little dissatisfied with her out of a subconscious xenophobia. But no. The unhurried words, with a bit of blame, clearly pointed out whose responsibility and whose mistakes were made. The light words made it impossible for everyone present to refute, and even more firmly convinced Fang Lanyi. The fact that she was uneducated made her feel ashamed and her reputation was ruined. This is so convincing that no one can refute it. Of course, no one would be stupid enough to refute her words at this time, because refuting her would mean not only offending Princess Feng, but also offending Prince Qi, the Chu family, Prince Jing's palace, and the regent who stood beside Princess Feng. They are all outstanding members of the imperial family, and they know when to speak and when to remain silent. "Everyone, please take a seat." Nan 11 walked towards the spacious flower hall, and several young princesses of the Xianyuan royal family followed her. Several young men automatically kept a certain distance from the princess. After entering the flower hall, the girls sat closer to Princess Feng, while the men automatically sat in a row on the outside. "Today is the first time I met Princess Feng, and I am a little surprised." Su Hanyu smiled lightly, gracefully. "The emperor and the high priest would rather abandon many princes and princesses of the royal family and bring Princess Feng back from Dezhou to inherit the throne. There is indeed some truth in it. I admire it very much." As he said, he turned his head and glanced at the regent Rongyu who was sitting next to Nan 11. Seeing that he had no expression fluctuations, he just took a teacup and poured a cup of tea for Nan 11. His noble and indifferent face was as cold as frost, revealing an innate pressure. Admiration, Xian Yuanyao held a teacup in his hand and leaned against the railing nonchalantly. Princess Feng is fair and impartial, and she convinces people with reason. She is indeed worthy of admiration, but this prince has heard that Master Su's words seem to have some other meaning. What does it mean to prefer to abandon many princes and princesses of the royal family? Do you know that saying this will cause misunderstanding? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 330. Xian Yuanyao spoke, and everyone present was a little surprised. Of course, Su Hanyu was even more surprised and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "What does this mean, Prince?" During the dinner, more than a dozen pairs of eyes looked at Xian Yuanyao calmly. If Chu Hong'ai's incident hadn't happened just now, they would have been very interested in what happened between Xian Yuanyao and Rongyu. Ever since they were beaten with 40 military sticks in the military camp that day, these young members of the royal family and the imperial family had the young men secretly looked forward to the two meeting again. In front of so many people, they wanted to know if Xian Yuanyao had already held a grudge against Rongyu. During these days of recovery, Had Xian Yuanyao thought of any way to get justice for himself? It's just that the good show hasn't been finished yet, but it was delayed a little by the affairs of several girls' families, so that they only remembered that there was Prince Huainan at this time. What does this prince mean? Mr. Su really can't hear it, or are you pretending to be stupid with me on purpose? Xian Yuanyao took a sip of tea carelessly and put the teacup on the table. Although the country is big, the emperor, prince and grandson are also there are many, but there is only one dragon chair. The emperor's grandfather and the high priest will choose him according to the will of the gods, and no one else can comment. After all, Mr. Su is from a noble family. He is not stupid to say this. The cure is that he is deliberately stirring up trouble in front of Princess Feng and the regent, trying to make them fear the royal family's heirs, so as to create a logical reason for eradicating the clan in the future. As he finished each word, Su Hanyu's face changed little by little, turning blue and white. She smiled to herself and said, "What kind of words did the prince say? How could I? So many people have heard it, do you still want Mr. Su to deny it?" Xian Yuanyao turned his eyes slightly and looked around leisurely and contentedly. "Do you think this prince has wronged him?" No one spoke. The huge flower hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The dignified and weak noble ladies' pretty faces turned pale. They didn't know why the topic had turned here, but even though they were naive and ignorant of worldly affairs, they could still hear the quarrel between Prince Huainan and Prince Su. As for whether Su Hanyu's words were a provocation or a deliberate attempt to gain limelight in front of Her Royal Highness the Princess, everyone has different views and opinions, but anyone with eyes can see that Prince Huainan was targeting Mr. Su. Su Hanyu's face stiffened and she stopped smiling. Her face turned completely cold and she looked at Xian Yuanyao with an evil look. "What do you mean? What's the meaning?" Xian Yuanyao pointed to his head. "What do you have here? What do you mean you need to ask me?" The flower hall became more and more deadly quiet. Su Hanyu's face had never looked pale and ugly. There was a swipe sound. Lingan unfolded the folding fan and shook it. In the winter when all the women wore cloaks or cloaks to keep out the cold, he fanned elegantly and leisurely with a graceful manner. "Is the little prince's injury feeling better?" After the words fell, he successfully caused another commotion, which naturally reminded everyone present of the hate between Xian Yuanyao and the regent Rong Yu. Everyone seemed to have nothing to do with it, but in fact, their eyes were calmly looking at Rong Yu, who had been silent. "You glanced over. Thank you for your concern." Xian Yuanyao raised his eyes slightly and looked at Lingan, who was diagonally across the street. "My young master is very strong, and injuries are common. Compared with those of you who live in a heap of splendid things and are untouchable. My young master, I'm so thick-skinned and rough dash." "You are indeed thick-skinned," a lazy and indifferent voice sounded, with a tone that was either mocking or teasing. He said unhurriedly, "You are especially thick-skinned." Xian Yuanyao paused, then slowly raised the corners of his lips. "What? Are you planning to join forces to besiege this prince?" "Don't get me wrong, young Prince," Lingan said, "I'm just out of concern." "I thank you and your whole family." Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows lightly, his tone was a bit cold. "My young master is a military general. Although his skills are not as good as others, he has always been used to speak his mind directly. I can't play with your scheming tricks. So no matter what your thoughts are today, I will leave it here. It was my fault that I was beaten in the military camp a few days ago. I should have been dealt with by military law. Moreover, it was my prince who took the initiative to challenge me and ultimately lost to the regent. I am willing to accept defeat. Everyone. Whether you are really curious, concerned, or trying to use this matter as an excuse to provoke my prince's hostility towards the regent, then my prince will probably disappoint you." As he spoke, he poured a glass of wine himself, stood up, walked to Princess Feng, knelt down on one knee and said, "Today I would like to express my loyalty with this wine." I also hope that Princess Feng and the Prince Regent will be broad-minded and will not forget the little ones after His Majesty ascends the throne. Whenever there is a decree, I will be loyal to the Lord, build the country, and ensure the stability of the border." After that, he raised his glass and drank it in one gulp. This sudden appearance was obviously unexpected. Before the noble gentlemen present had a chance to respond to his deep scheming, they saw that he had already stood up and knelt down to show his loyalty, leaving everyone present in silence for a moment, and his expression could be as subtle as possible. "What is this thing called?" They thought they could see a scene in which enemies become extremely jealous when they meet, but they didn't expect that the Prince of Huainan would recognize him so quickly. "Is this the so-called military commander's style?" "Your Majesty, please rise." Nan 11 smiled faintly. "I believe in your loyalty and the strength of the Huainan army. Rong Yu and you are both generals, and they are broad-minded. They will not take what happened to their heart. Your Majesty does not have to mind." Xian Yuanyao thanked him. When he stood up, he raised his eyes and glanced at Rong Yu, who was sitting silently next to Nan 11. He met Rong Yu's cold and indifferent eyes. He quickly lowered his head as if he was electrocuted, secretly thinking that this man is really serious. He can hold his breath and make himself as invisible as an invisible man, but he is a giant Buddha himself. Even if he just sits there quietly without saying a word, he can give people an unparalleled sense of oppression. To support Princess Feng? Xian Yuanyao thought to himself for a moment, but he still disagreed. He admitted that Princess Feng was much more calm and steady than ordinary women, and she had a strong bearing. But after all, she was just a weak woman. No matter how outstanding she was, how could she be stronger than the regent of Zhou dynasty? Wang Rongjia. Xian Yuanyao couldn't figure out what Rong Yu was thinking when he was willing to become a foil in order to support her. Returning to his seat, Xian Yuanyao raised his eyes and looked at Xiejian, who had just said that he was thick-skinned. "I have always heard that the 9th master of the Xie family is very beautiful and the most beautiful person in the world. It is true when I see him today. This face makes all the girls present. It's a competition. If I hadn't known that Mr. Xieju was a man, I would have fallen in love with Mr. Ju at first sight." The author has something to say. The update is a little late tonight. Sorry, there is another update that will come out later.